Hello, we're going to be going over the June 2021 release notes today. A little bit different format. Figured we would start showing this over video because we're releasing so much at this rate that I think it's easier to go over this way. So lo and behold, we're just going to kick through the notes here, drop the music a little bit. Alright, so June, I'd say it was we have a lot of big months, but June is particularly big. It was really focused on developer tools. With the biggest developer tool we released would be what we're calling on-the-fly media rendering. And that is fully documented here. So you can go to zesty.org. I'm going to post documentation into the stream. Let me just find that up. So please bear with me as I'm still getting used to this. Yeah, so you can see that. So this is the new image tool. Basically, any image you upload to Zesty at this rate has the ability to be modified on the fly, which is very useful, especially when you're working headlessly or not or anything. Traditionally, we would only have access to having two pretty much parsley calls, and parsley let you crop or fit an image and let you control the height, which would optimize it and was useful, but this goes way beyond that. So you get now the ability to change the background color, blur things, change brightness, crop to canvas size specific, so you can crop to the corner of an image. I'll show you that here. So you can really pull out. So the original base image we're working with looks like this, and you can grab parts of the city, the whole city, parts of the plane, etc. So we'll just show like a little live demo of how this works. And I'm just pasting in a URL here, which you can't see. Let me pull that down so you can see the URL. Yeah, you can see the URL just in the top. So any image you upload to Zesty has access to this immediately right now. And all it needs to do is you append what's called a query parameter. In this case, brightness 20 is on. If I change brightness to 80, you'll see the image get even more washed out, which is, it may not be pretty, but it's good to be able to do. So I can change this query parameter to say crop, and crop takes in a ratio, so I can say 1:1, which will give me a square. And you can mix crop with, width. So if I want to have like say a 100 pixel by 100 pixel square, I can say crop 1:1 and width equals 100, and now I get 100 by 100 cropped image. And what's really awesome about this cropped image is it serves in WebP format, meaning that it's really optimized for the web. And if I refresh this to look at the size of this particular image, that's 4 kilobytes. Now if we go to the original image, it's 358 kilobytes, so it's quite a big change. So every image now is served through WebP format, even if it's uploaded as a JPEG or a PNG, so it'd be progressive JPEG. And that actually gives you better Google scores. So when you use Google Page Speed Insights, you're going to get a lot of points for this. And this is all for free, so every Zesty customer gets this, every new Zesty customer gets this. For more documentation, it is available as a link in the release notes, but you can see you can do things from modifying contrast to doing DPR, which is the device pixel ratio. The cropping is very useful. You can rotate the image on the fly, which also could be fun. You can add borders to it, etc. So quite a bit to explore there. It's a big release and very useful. So when you're working headlessly, you no longer need to worry about parsley passing the image. You can just throw a query parameter to control the image, and I think that is the best result from that. So also going through, we're just going to cut through this list of release notes here that you see on the right. And quite a bit of lines of codes went out. A lot of releases, heavy focus on the Manager UI and WebEngine. Particularly removed a cache control coming from WebEngine. So WebEngine always posts a cache control, and we deploy using Google Cloud, and there was an issue that Google Cloud was reading that and caching it in their own system. So we had to remove that in order to stop this strange publishing hiccup we were running into. There's a new update to the parsley call, which is get image height. So you can now say like this .image .get image height. So before you render the page, you can make decisions based upon the image's height or width. Preview lock, which is one of the security features for the preview web engine. You can now pass the password as a get parameter. This should only be used for internal workflows that are authenticated. The point of doing this was so that OG image tags would be fetched if you're working in Jira or other systems, so you can get more information about the link before clicking on it. Otherwise, the link would just say not authorized and was creating really confusing workflows for people who were going through publishing and trying to share links internally. It also helps get around people who don't have a Zesty password or a Zesty login can just be shared that link internally. Again, this should strictly be used internally. It's really easy to change the password. I highly recommend that you rotate your password every 3 months. The Instant API now has fully qualified URLs. Before, the Instant API used to only return // instant. Now it actually gives you the full picture. We can see that over here on the left. When we view the Instant API, we can actually see the fully qualified URL, which is really useful because you can just click it, right? Before you had to like make the request and figure out know what the actual preview domain was and whatnot, or the live domain. This works for the live domain as well. So pretty useful update. The Instant API also got a couple more qualified items underneath meta. So yeah, the Instant API got a few little updates there. Nothing got changed, so you don't have to worry about anything you were calling with the Instant API changing. You can also now go to the top level of Instant API to get a mapping of all the models you have and all the links to the models that to get to their different Instant API endpoint. That one worked out really well. Let's see here. All right, so keep going down. Another big feature released is WebEngine Modes, and there's also a article about WebEngine Modes. And that gets into this one here. That just talks about the ability now you can switch your web engine from headless, hybrid, or traditional modes, and it's quite useful. Everybody's still running traditional mode. Traditional just means that Zesty acts the way it always acts. And then you have like the GraphQL APIs, the Instant APIs. Those are still have to be toggled and turned on. CORS mode is still set to block requests coming in. And then you could toggle between headless and hybrid mode. So hybrid mode is the same as traditional mode, except all the APIs for headless are turned on and are made available. You can also do something really neat where you could take a page here, like Zesty.io, and you can throw a question mark toJSON to the end, and it's going to return you that full page as hydrated data. So it's going to give you back all the information here. It's going to hydrate everything, and you'll get access to like this share image, for example, and then right from here you can just, if you're working headlessly, you could call it and modify it on the fly. This also returns this meta list, and it gives you a bunch of information about meta, the locale, so you know what language you're working with, information about the model, and web, and it goes through the fragments, the canonical tag mode. So if you're building fully headlessly, you'd have access to all this to build out your data. So there's also headless mode, and headless mode actually, instead of returning a view made by Parsley, it just returns straight up JSON. So you don't even have to do the toJSON call. Another cool little trick with the toJSON call. Let's just pull up the release notes so we can see it hydrate. So what's cool is you can see it, it takes the relationships and it hydrates the relationships too, so you don't have to make that extra network request to get the relationship information. We'll take authors, and you'll see it'll return an array of data for each one. And it'll even hydrate the relationships of the hydrated data up to 5 levels deep. So that way you can get all the data you need, not have to worry about making all these extra network requests. Sometimes you don't want all this extra web data. So if you notice that meta comes at the end of everything, and then there's a lot of data, right? That's a lot of text to get back. So if you're not looking for that metadata, you can say equals no meta, and you'll get a much cleaner object in return that's really just going to turn you back the content and its hydrated relationships. So you can see it's a much shorter object here. So you can read more about the modes from the website. It's an article. There's a little bit more information on them, but we're going to keep cruising through the release notes. Headless mode does bring some new functionality, which you can now get to. It's //headless off of your web engine URL. And that's going to give you a summary about the different ways you can access headless data in Zesty, and some links, some documentation links. So it's kind of like your base plate. Just say like, all right, this is where I start from working headlessly. It tells you what mode you're running in and authorization. Speaking of, from an authorization standpoint, you can now request that anything published to your production site has to have a bearer token attached to it in order to fulfill the request. Otherwise, it gets a 401 blocking the request completely. And these are two options. Everybody has access to these options. If you put them in, it will shut down your production site. So it's not something you want to use if you're running in traditional mode. But if you are running headless and you want to block other people from getting access to anything you get out there, just so that way your application has access, this is what you're going to use. Preview lock password is also available. It's been available for a while, but this setting is now installed for everybody, so you can actually have a preview lock password without having to talk to support. Going through, so headless also brought a new routing endpoint, which is useful. So if you're building completely headlessly away from Zesty, you can use this routing endpoint to map out all your routes, and it's even giving you the JSON link to fully hydrated content for each one of the routes. So if you want to map your routes to the content to build out pages in like Next.js or your own custom application, it's all right here for you, including the path part, the URI, meta description, meta title. So going down, we're getting into the manager UI now. There's been a bunch of just experiential updates to it as well, but I'll focus on some of the kind of more visual ones. Key one now in content, there's filter, right? So if you want to get down to what content you have, you can just type in and it's going to let you know which models you have access to in content. This is useful because I've seen people use Zesty where they go to the schema first and they figure out where their schema is, click here, then they click over here. To get to where they're going, that you can now have access to from the Manager UI. Also in the Manager UI, when you're viewing data, there's going to be this lighter gray text after the actual title, and that is telling you what type of data you're working with and the parsley reference. So this is helpful for developers or developers working with marketers if they need to communicate what the parsley reference is, because how you call parsley is not always the way things are titled. Sometimes things are titled to help the content author, even though the parsley reference will be shortened. So that is now showing you there, and you can see like description is a type of text area and its actual name is description. HTML WYSIWYG is a WYSIWYG basic data type and its reference is HTML. You can see that here. This one's pretty literal, so it's not super useful to see, but if we were to look at maybe like the home page, let's see. Lead in title, it's type text, but its reference is title. It's not lead in title, it's just title. So that's where it comes in use. This one's called intro text. It's a WYSIWYG advanced. Its reference is content. So this is a good example where title has not even related to the name of the actual parsley reference. So pretty key. Things like if you were changing data, I believe like this, and you were to navigate away, instead of having a not designed pop-up, we now have a on-brand pop-up that you can interact with to prevent you from leaving if you made some changes. A couple other things are experiential, just around bugs. For Zesty hybrid users, so anyone who uses Zesty that actually uses Zesty as an origin for whatever their own custom run CDN is, the purge buttons, these refresh cache item here, and the one up here, refresh cache item, those will now purge hybrid instantiations of Zesty. Before they were just purging Zesty Cloud and it's confusing for the hybrid users. Now that actually purges hybrid as well. There's also notifications up here. Don't know if you guys know about this. One's been out for a while, but it's also useful to see what's been going on. Like this item was purged for the cache, etc. So cruising down, there's also now a home button here. This will get you back to your dashboard. That way, if you want to get back here for reference to see latest publishes or these jump tos to get the schema, you can just go, before you had to click content, but when you're within content now, you can just click the home button to get there. So also with Parsley now, you can make a toJSON call with Parsley. Just use this cache testing endpoint here. So when you're writing Parsley, so if I'm looping through my references test, I could just simply go test.toJSON. And that's going to give you a fully hydrated JSON output of the object that you're dealing with, or the content item you are accessing. That's very useful. We'll be covering that more later. That's pretty much it for the updates. Let me know any feedback about this format, if you guys appreciate this over others. I think it's a good way because there's so much going out the door. We'll be doing this monthly. But yeah, any feedback, welcome to hear. Thanks a lot. Take care. Be safe.